Lights, camera, action. Robert logged into Backstage and surfed through the latest postings for casting calls in Orange County. He'd been looking for months for something that really spoke to him. But now, let's be honest, he's mainly looking for something that'll just pay some bills. Things had definitely been a little slim, and his wife could only shoulder the load for so long. Although his eyes were quite tired of the search, he had a sense that today something would present itself. Call it a hunch, whatever. Something told him to keep after it today. And that's when it happened. A brand new post. It was buried so far down that he couldn't help but wonder if it was hidden here just for him. The role called for something of an Indiana Jones meets Sherlock Holmes character who solved mad mysteries in the face of overwhelming danger. Now, Robert never actually pictured himself as an action hero. Not that he was a weak-kneed Casper Milquetoast, but let's just say that his flight or fight instinct had always favored flight. But again, for some reason, his senses fairly tingled at this possibility. He applied for an audition and drove downtown the next morning to run some lines for the director. Robert really felt comfortable with the test scripts, and his voice seemed to be in perfect sync with whatever suggestion the director made. This was different than any audition he'd ever been a part of before. And when he left, they told him he got the part. Awesome! He was so excited he couldn't wait to tell his wife. As the filming of his new project progressed, Robert kind of grew into the role. He began to build a bit of a reputation. Not as a guy who could handle being surrounded by deadly snakes, or of a guy who could bravely jump out of a plane without a parachute, or even of a guy who could outsmart the smartest villain on the planet, but of a guy who acted like he could do all that stuff. Robert never acted like that in life. Stress tended to paralyze his ability to make decisions, and if he could move forward, it wasn't with any type of confidence. If something got in his way, his flight instinct was always within quick reach. But lately, it just felt different. After a couple of months of filming, his wife noticed it too. When a neighbor complained about how their trash cans sometimes blew into their yard, Robert didn't stress over the confrontation. He simply apologized and rigged up a stake near the mailbox that the can could be attached to while waiting for pickup. And then 2 weeks ago, when a violent storm was bearing down on their area, the Robert who would normally be wringing his hands inside as he imagined the worst possible that could have possibly happened was outside in the wind, securing things around the house and helping the neighbors do the same. She even heard him singing a praise song from church in the middle of the bluster. Production continued, and Robert's character, Caruso, who had already saved a number of innocent lives in the course of his exploits, was being drawn into darker and darker mysteries. But the magic power of movies that can weave the watcher into an emotional web of intrigue loses its magical powers on the actors. They can see the safety of the most dangerous looking set. Most importantly, they see the script. So they know in advance that these dark powers are totally fake. They're just something out of the imagination of the author or the director to create some drama. Oh, it's not always easy. Some of those sets and locations are scary realistic. And if they haven't been given that part of the script, because they didn't have any lines in it, they can find themselves in the middle of a mob of angry witch doctors or flaming volcanic lava or being sucked from an airplane or maybe puckered up with a pretty girl. terrifying situations where they have to keep reminding themselves that this is only a movie and that the director made sure everything would be safe. The actors get to the point where they can actually laugh and congratulate each other after scenes that would have the bravest guys in the audience covering their faces in fear. And whatever secrets the director might keep from the actors to promote more honest on-camera reactions are completely known to the director. So all the actors know that whatever happens during filming is totally safe. And speaking of laughing, Robert was doing a lot more chuckling to himself lately, especially when he wasn't filming. The parallels kept kind of slapping him in the face. The scenes that he comfortably acted his way through at work and the scenes that made up his entire life. The very fact that he was still alive and happily married were evidence that all the fears he'd had over the years were like movie sets. Fake, harmless. Oh, sure, there had been some pain, but nothing was ever as bad as he thought it would be. Almost like a director knew everything and wondered if Robert would trust him. Like when those guys in the Bible knew they'd get tossed into a furnace if they didn't bow down to a statue. A furnace! They probably hoped the director would put out the fire as soon as they went in. But no, instead he actually joined them. And the previously deadly flames went all CGI. Didn't hurt him a bit. Who saw that coming? And like the kid who faced the baddest bad guy in the history of bad guys in a battle to the death. But it was like the kid had seen the script, and it didn't really matter what he used to fight the giant. He already knew he'd come out on top. He even saw how the scene would end, so he just ran into it to get it right on the first take. And what about Jesus walking out to meet the guys in the boat during that storm? Do you think he went up and down, walking on the top of every wave, barely getting his feet wet? Or do you think he kind of splashed his way through the waves like a kid walking through a wheat field, laughing and playfully making his way through the tall wheat? Whatever it was, it looked like something Peter wanted to do, so he did it. He ignored all the noise and the blowing and the fact that he actually couldn't walk on water, and he jumped out. Turns out he was right. Gravity only had as much power over him as he let it have. When he watched Jesus, he ignored it, and it wasn't a real part of his life. Gravity. Later, of course, he snapped out of it, or would that be actually snapped into it, and sank. How many wandered Robert of the storms, the sick days, the low bank balances, the times of rejection or loneliness, all the things that seemed to threaten his security? How much could have been compared to movie sets, where the director was waiting to give him a cue, a line, an action, but he panicked and got lost in the scene and never even looked at the director? What could have been an epic action film, maybe even the beginning of an action film franchise, derailed into a disaster that didn't even go to DVD, just fizzled. Instead of an iconic inspiration to an entire generation, just another flop. He began to see how the biggest role of his entire career was as an actor. He was uniquely suited to help everybody he met. He knew how scenes can create grand illusions. He knew there's always a director. He could teach anybody how to ignore stuff that's just in the scene for effect. He has seen how simply studying the script can help us overcome fear, bravely lead just causes, and never, never, ever give up. Because we know things will end well. How stupid would it look if the hero of a movie came up to the final scene where he defeats the villain and gets the girl, but he quits right before the scene because he's afraid he'll lose? Are you kidding me? Didn't he read the script? It's not that hard. Just gotta trust the director.